Number 13. Pero Tokseng, also known as the Tiger's Nest. This monastery is built in the Himalayas in the small country of Bhutan on a sacred cliffside. The temple complex was first built in 1692 and is home to some dedicated Buddhist monks. The secluded monastery was built in honor of a guru who was believed to have flew to this location from Tibet on the back of a tigress. The cliff on which it was built lies about 3,000 feet above the Pero Valley and 10,000 feet above sea level. The grueling, steep hike to get up here is normally enough to keep travelers away, but the breathtaking view from the top may be worth it. Number 12. Palmerston Island. Geographically speaking, Palmerston Island is one of the most isolated communities in the world. Situated about halfway between South America and Australia in the Cook Islands, there are only about 62 people who occupy this tropical paradise. Here you won't find an airport, a gas station, a grocery store, or even cars. Almost seems like the perfect place to escape to. The island is located at the rim of an ancient volcano that's been submerged by the Pacific Ocean. This volcano rises over 13,000 feet. The island's founding father, William Marster, was an English adventurer who fell in love with the island, as well as Polynesian women, and decided to never leave. The descendants of him and his two wives still inhabit the area. The ones who do call Palmerston Island home are very self-sufficient. They rely on the ocean for their resources. Local delicacies include coconut, parrotfish, and wahoo fish. Number 11. Itako Tormiut. This settlement in eastern Greenland is only accessible by helicopter or boats, and is home to about 450 people. The name was given by an Arctic explorer, William Scoresby, and the name translates to big house dwellers in the Greenland dialect. It's likely there's more polar bears, seals, and musk oxen living here than humans. The people living here are of Inuit descent, but ruled technically under Denmark. Local hunters make a living from traditionally hunting polar bears, narwhals, Arctic foxes, and whales. The brutal winters and nearly freezing summers make it certainly a challenge living here. Number 10. Supai Village. The Supai Village is possibly the most isolated community on the continental United States. It's only accessible by helicopter or 8-mile hike from the nearest road. Located in Arizona on the Havasupai Indian Reservation, it's still the only place in the U.S. where mail is actually delivered by mule. Due to its proximity to the Grand Canyon, it still manages to attract occasional tourists willing to take the 8-mile trek through the desert. In the past, the village has been damaged by flash floods, and the trails were closed off, adding to its isolation. About 200 people call this desert village home, with 96% of them being Native American. Number 9. The Sami Community. The Sami people are the indigenous group inhabiting the northern parts of Finland, Norway, Sweden, and the Kola Peninsula in Russia. Despite living in freezing temperatures that could easily kill them, they managed to find a way to survive the inhospitable conditions. Their biggest ally in the battle for survival is the reindeer. Reindeer herding accounts as their main source of food, furs to keep them warm, and antlers that can be made into tools. To make their coffee a little more refreshing with extra protein, they've been known to mix reindeer tongue inside this beverage. For traditional reasons, reindeer herding is only permitted to the Sami people in the northern Nordic countries. Despite facing discrimination and occasional infringements on their sacred lands, the Sami cling on to their heritage. Some villages, like you see in this photo, are actually located beyond the Arctic Circle. Number 8. Faroe Islands. What do you think life would be like on some of the most remote islands of Europe? The Faroe Islands are located between Norway and Iceland, just north of Scotland. The estimated population of this self-governing archipelago is about 50,000 and is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Solitary houses like you see in this photo are often constructed on this rugged land and sometimes are covered in grass. The Faroe Islands share many cultural differences from the rest of the world. Over 1,000 years ago, Irish hermit monks decided to originally inhabit this area, and then it was later on settled by the Vikings. People here are most likely outnumbered by sheep, and these people rely on a heavy diet of meat since growing crops here is difficult. Much controversy has been spread due to hunting habits of these people. It's considered to be a 1,000-year-old tradition to force a large number of pilot whales onto the shore where they meet their untimely end. The hunt often provides a large amount of food that is readily available and a sense of community as well. Number 7. Barrow, Alaska. Not too many places are more remote than Alaska, so one of the most remote cities in the state is sure to make our list. Barrow, Alaska is the northernmost city in the United States, and not too far away is Point Barrow, the nation's northernmost point. The city's population is about 4,500 people and is comprised of 60% Native Americans or Eskimo descent. And if you thought it might get cold here, you have no idea. The record low that was recorded here was negative 56 degrees Fahrenheit. The average temperature here is about negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit in January, And don't expect things to warm up too much during summer. The remote community, like many in Alaska, rely on importation from airplanes, which have been known to get caught up in storms. Ships must come here before the Arctic Ocean freezes over. It's completely isolated from the major Alaskan road system, and doesn't feature places like McDonald's, movie theaters, or malls. But if you need those kind of things, there's 2 planes that leave here each day. However, the city's actually a pretty big football town, as featured on a television show for the NFL Network. This photo here depicts the high school's blue turf football field. Imagine playing a game in the punishing weather right next to the Arctic Ocean. Number 6. Siwa Oasis. Within the vast Sahara Desert lies the Siwa Oasis, and one of the most isolated settlements in Egypt and all of Africa. Living here, however, is nothing new, and the earliest known settlers came here during the 10th century BC. Being completely surrounded by dry, inhospitable desert has allowed the Siwa people to develop a unique culture from the rest of the Middle East. This is often seen in their style of artwork, jewelry, and their same-sex marriage ceremonies. They also speak a language that's known as Siwi, or Oasis Berber, making them somewhat foreign to the eastern part of Egypt. Here in this photo, we see a girl wearing the traditional dress of Siwa while grinding salt. The oasis is inhabited by about 30,000 Siwa Berbers, and the hot springs are known to occasionally attract tourists. If you're looking for some good dates, the people of the Siwa Oasis have been growing them for the past 3,500 years. Number 5. Migingo Island. Located in Lake Victoria in southern Africa, it's currently under dispute between Uganda and Kenya, but it's normally shown on maps as part of Kenya. This island is densely populated for its 2-acre size. The population is about 500 people, and it's mostly made up of fishermen and fish traders. It's home to 4 pubs, many brothels, and 1 pharmacy. No wonder 2 countries want this place. The economical potential and revenue generated from the fishing here appears to be the main reason for the dispute. It takes at least 3 hours by boat from the mainland to reach this island, and life here is tough. Pollution has led to deplorable conditions. Children are somewhat forced to join the workforce early, and sewage ends up in the lake. Number 4. Grise Fjord. If you were ever looking on the globe or Google Earth at the islands in northern Canada and wondered if people actually live there, the answer is yes, and Grise Fjord is probably one of the most shocking examples. Located within the Nunavut territory of Canada, it's certainly one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth, with a yearly temperature of negative 16.5 degrees Celsius, the northernmost settlement in Canada. Not too surprisingly, the population here seems to be steadily declining and only houses 150 permanent residents. No connecting roads means the only way to connect to the outside world is by airplane. Due to the difficulty of getting products to this isolated community, prices are much higher for everyday items, and it's like this for much of the Nunavut territory. In this photo, we see a gallon of milk here priced at an outrageous 10 Canadian dollars. Number 3. La Riconada, Peru. The highest permanent settlement in the world would be La Riconada, located near the border of Bolivia in the Andes Mountains, situated 16,700 feet or 5,100 meters above sea level. It's easy to see why this is one of the most isolated communities in the world. In this photo, you see a giant glacier known as Bella Durmiente, or the Sleeping Beauty, looking down upon the city. With over 50,000 inhabitants, it's not necessarily a small community either. If you're thinking about visiting this place though, think again. There are no hotels and no hospitals. The community also lacks police and government presence as well. Built as an unregulated gold mining town, it's home to some of the most brutal living conditions imaginable. Many visitors would suffer from altitude sickness, but with the lure of striking it rich with gold, people have found a way to adapt to the environment. Number 2. Longyearbyen. Just by looking at Svalbard on a map, you can probably guess that it's isolated. The largest settlement of Svalbard, Norway, has a population of 2,100 residents. It's the northernmost settlement with over 1,000 residents in the world, and was nearly destroyed by the German Navy during World War II. It's located about 1,269 miles north of the Norwegian capital of Oslo, making it a tad difficult to govern. Here in Longyearbyen, snowmobiles are actually preferred method of transportation. A few ships will transport coal to this archipelago, and with a few flights from Oslo and Russia each day, Longyearbyen keeps contact with the outside world.
And now for number 1. But first, be sure to subscribe for new videos every day.
And number 1. Tristan da Cunha. This island gets the nickname as the most remote inhabited island in the world, because it sort of is. Tristan is the tip of a volcano thrusted upwards from the ocean floor, and by looking at the signs, you'll definitely feel a long ways from home, about 6,500 feet. The closest landmass is St. Helena, only about 1,500 miles away. It seems to be situated directly between the southern tips of Africa and South America, and is only accessible by navigating the brutal seas. You might imagine that life on the world's most remote island is a little bit rough, but the people here actually enjoy a good standard of living. Crime seems virtually non-existent on the biggest settlement called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. Many families own potato patches to grow their own food. Despite the good quality of living, an active volcano constantly threatens to destroy the city, and it almost did in the 1960s. It's not just people living here either. The local rockhopper penguins are extremely popular for those who are somehow able to visit this isolated community.